Ladies and gentlemen, beautiful people out there, let's finish up our thoughts. Let's get it all done. I've got ownership projections, notes for every single viable player that's going to be running a route or taking a carry or taking a snap this week on this Thanksgiving 3-game slate. I hope you're having a lovely week. If you're watching this on Thanksgiving, the day before, sit back, relax, take the drumstick out of your mouth, the turkey leg out of your mouth. Mind your manners. Come on now. Hey. Let's have a good time here. Let's start position by position. Quarterback, running back, wide receiver, and tight end. We're going to close up this slate, this 3-game slate, and you will know exactly all the information you possibly need to then make the decisions that you want. I will give some potential pointers here, but at the most part, we're trying to give you objective information as much as we can, data-based, information-based, film-watching-based, and you're going to be ready to go. That's what we do for every single video, and this is a special one because it's once a year, the 3-game Thursday slate for Thanksgiving. So let's slide into it right now. We're going to start with the quarterback position this week. 6 quarterbacks is what we're looking at. And disclaimer, because it's the holidays, I'm recording this on Tuesday afternoon. So since I'm recording this on Tuesday afternoon, of course, some news can come out and alter some things that we're doing here. But early on right now, it does indeed lean that Justin Fields is not going to play and Dalton will be playing. And whether it's Jared Goff or Tim Boyle, I mean, Jared Goff helps a little bit to an extent to keep guys like Khalif Raymond viable and maybe Amon-Ra St. Brown. But for the most part, I don't really care who starts. If it's Jared Goff, he's going to project for like 13 fantasy points. If it's Boyle, he's going to project for like 11 fantasy points. For the most part, I'm not too concerned with who is starting in Detroit. And it does look like Andy Dalton is going to start in Chicago. So that's where we go. And you can see right now, it's pretty cut or dry. I don't have any maybes. So if you're first time here because Thanksgiving, maybe you just found me, usually if I put an X on a player, it means that I do like them, but I don't like them as much as the Ys. They're kind of like a maybe, right? Or percentage-wise, I have less of them than the yeses. But I'm trying to build this video if you're building just one lineup or maybe just 2 or 3. If you're playing 150, yeah, you're going to have shares of Trevor Siemian and Andy Dalton and hell, maybe even 1% of Tim Boyle. And as I'm saying this, literally news just came out from NBC Sports Edge that it's leaning, all signs are leaning towards Goff starting. Again, we'll update the projections. Jared Goff's name in here instead of Tim Boyle doesn't really change too much for me. So we can start up top here. And what I'm looking at is just guys who can actually win me a slate. And that's the 3 guys up top: Josh Allen, Dak Prescott, and Derek Carr. We can start with Josh Allen, who is currently my highest projected quarterback on the slate. And we've touched on it in terms of the Thursday Night Football video that's already released. We go in depth on that specific showdown slate, but he's seeing more too high mans, right? He's seeing more of these zone coverages. And what is that going to lead to? It's going to lead to less big plays. You have to check down more. You have to run the ball more. And right now they're just not doing that. So I'm not shocked in this game to see them try and run the ball more against New Orleans if New Orleans goes too high, which New Orleans has a good run defense, but anytime you go too high, you're taking an extra man out of the box, which will leave Josh Allen and Buffalo an advantage in the running game, or at least a perceived advantage if they actually try to take advantage of it with their 3-headed backfield they've been using the last 2 weeks. Josh Allen, though, they have the weapons. Just like the Chiefs, it took the Chiefs 2 or 3 weeks to figure it out. It's been 2 weeks now, 2 out of the last 3 games for Buffalo. It's going to take a little bit of time, but they have the weapons. They did it against the Jets. The Jets, a terrible secondary, much better secondary here, ranking 6th in the NFL right now, the New Orleans Saints. But they have the weapons. They have a Stephon Diggs. They now have a healthy Dawson Knox. They have Cole Beasley now healthy, running 28 routes after only running 8 the week before. So they have the healthy pieces on offense. They have the zone beaters, right? They have those guys underneath that can win in that area. So I'm not too concerned that now this Buffalo offense is just going to be completely broken. Is it regressing from last year and at earlier strides of this year? Yeah, I would say for a lot of the parts this year, it hasn't been that great. But Josh Allen so far for me is looking pretty good. I have him coming in as the highest projected quarterback. He is my 3rd best value point per dollar quarterback on the slate, but he's my highest projected. So he's going to be the highest owned. He's going to be the highest projected. All of that looks great. There is so much value at tight end. There's so much value, I mean, generally speaking, at running back and all across the board at wide receiver when we get to those positions, that it's really easy to go to Josh Allen on the slate. Is he my favorite quarterback on this slate right now? Projection-wise, yes, but overall-wise, I think I can probably get to this Dallas and Vegas game. And when I'm looking at the Dallas and Vegas game, we can start with Dak Prescott, who Dak Prescott will likely be without his top 2 receivers. Ezekiel Elliott on Tuesday got into full practice. You have no CeeDee Lamb or no Amari Cooper for this game, and CeeDee Lamb has not practiced Monday or Tuesday as of this recording in the concussion protocol. It is very unlikely that he clears by Thursday in basically like a 3-day time. And the thing that I like about Dallas is they're the highest team total on the slate, a 29-point team total. Just below right now, Josh Allen in my point projections is Dak Prescott. I got him for about 21.5 points. All my projections are linked down below and ownership if you're indeed interested. So what you're getting right now is him without his top 2 receivers, but they have great fill-ins. This Dallas wide receiver core has so much depth to it. What is that depth? Well, it's Michael Gallup, who is clearly going to be either their wide receiver 2 if they let Amari walk next year, or somewhere a wide receiver 1 or 2. He's a very good receiver. They have Cedric Wilson, who would be a great wide receiver 2 on 50 to 60 to maybe even 70% of the league's teams in the NFL right now. So that's great. And then they got depth after that. They got Noah Brown, who's been in this system now for a handful of years, who they really like in the run blocking scheme. He's really good. He's one of the better receivers in terms of his run blocking abilities as a receiver. And he's fine overall, especially as a bigger body player once he gets into the red zone. He's been running a lot of routes all season long for them, even when their main 3 receivers have been out there, which has been a limited amount of time. It's been really like the first game of the year. But even last year when those guys have been healthy, Noah Brown's still being utilized. So this is still a solid receiving core, believe it or not, especially when you factor in the matchup that Dak is going to get while he's going out there against this Vegas team. And that's why you're seeing, Vegas losing Arnett for off the field issues, right? Their secondary currently ranks 18th, but if anything, it's trending downward towards probably bottom third of the league as a secondary right now. So if you look at this on paper, it's going to be looking like a good spot for Dak Prescott. Now we'll track the offensive line's injury status. Tyron Smith, make sure that he's playing or at least going to be in this game, will help us a lot more when we're looking at it. But it's easy to stack up Dak. He's not running. He's not showing his mobility all that much. So it's really easy, especially when we get to his wide receivers and you see how damn cheap they are this week. So right now it's going to be depending on how much money you need to save. If you can afford Dak, he's looking like my favorite quarterback on this slate. Otherwise, if you want to take the $1,000 plunge, the best value play on the slate for me, point per dollar value, how much bang for your buck you're getting for them, is going to be Derek Carr. I have Derek Carr projecting out for 19.5 fantasy points. I have him coming in with moderate 20% ownership on a 3-game slate, which looks very good. He has the 3rd highest team total, even though he's an underdog, which bodes well. If you're an underdog with a nice team total, it usually means you're going to be throwing a lot in that game. So Derek Carr is in a very interesting spot as a 7-point underdog with a 22-point implied team total. And oh yeah, he leads all the quarterbacks on this slate in overall attempts per game at about 38, in overall yards per game at 314. He leads the slate in yards per attempt. And you get this great price point of $5,900 now against this Dallas secondary. This Dallas secondary has been fine. It's like a borderline top. It's probably closer to league average, borderline top 10, depending on the metrics you look at. It's been completely fine. Micah Parsons just wrecking shit makes their pass rush look a lot better than it probably is. And it likely causes some chaos, which is built into the fact that they're 7-point underdogs here for the offensive line, and maybe less time for Derek Carr, who when Derek Carr is pressured becomes an absolute potato. He becomes an absolute potato, right? You got your mashed potatoes, you got your candied yams right now, you got your sweet potatoes, the best. I love the sweet potatoes. Thanksgiving here. He becomes a candied yam, right? And not in the good sense, not in the tasty sense, in the spoiled sense that it's the last one there and it's just oversaturated in the syrup. You don't love it. You're probably looking at one right now at the table. Mind your his phone at the table. Come on now. But you know what I'm saying here. There's obviously downsides to Derek Carr, but that's why he's $5,900, right? That's why he's $5,900. If there was no downsides, if he was fantastic against pressure, if his offensive line was not going to have a negative pass blocking advantage, he'd be $7,000, right? He'd be an expensive player in the slate. So we like Derek Carr. We like the times that he's going to throw. We do like the weapons as well. Like Henry Ruggs, he's not throwing downfield anywhere as much as he was, which is a concern. And Bryan Edwards is not stepping up, but he still has these security blankets in Darren Waller and Hunter Renfrow. And he now has, slowly but surely, and we'll talk about it, Deshaun Jackson in 2 games has taken leaps and bounds forward from like a 15% snaps to 34%. And who knows if this is the week that Deshaun gets that 50 to 60% snaps, it can unlock a lot of things that Henry Ruggs was unlocking in this offense. So Derek Carr is a yes for me. And then after that, and Carr, it's gonna, look, all 3 of these guys are strong plays. In 3 max, I probably make a lineup with each of them. In single entry, it might come down to that Dallas and Vegas game we'll end up seeing there. That's probably where I'm leaning early on. But Josh Allen just as good of a play. It's just tough to get to a Simeon or an Andy Dalton or a Jared Goff, who seems to be in line to start now. Even though they're cheaper, it's just they're pretty damn close in price to Derek Carr, who projects out way better for me. You have Simeon, who's averaging 18.4 fantasy points per game as a starter. Somehow, some way, Sean Payton is elevating him to be fantasy relevant in these 4 games, but he's been terrible. 57% completion percentage, 6.4 yards per attempt during that time. He's just barely getting you there, but now he has to face the number 1 secondary in the NFL. That's not a great spot to go into now against Buffalo. So I'm going to be jumping off that Simeon train. You look at Andy Dalton coming off of not starting in a while now. He played the first 2 games of the year where the offensive line gave him no time, but he looked absolutely terrible. The nice thing for Dalton is just a matchup, right? It's the matchup, but it'll be a really slow-paced game. The team total looks decent. If you were to choose any of these guys between Simeon, Goff, and Dalton, I would choose Dalton, primarily because of the matchup, and I actually think he's the best, most talented of these 3 remaining guys here. But he's only $300 or $400 cheaper than Carr. Just go up to Carr, especially when the ownership is going to be like 10% on Dalton and 20% on Carr. It's not worth that 10% difference. So that's kind of where the quarterbacks lie. The one big thing to be pointing out for all of you right now, and I'll pop it up onto the screen, we mentioned it in the Thursday Night Football video, Prize Picks as of midnight on Wednesday, so technically Thursday morning, they are running the best promotion you will find since week 1. Week 1, they ran a promotion with Patrick Mahomes. If he throws for 1 passing yard or more, just 1 passing yard in week 1, which he did, spoiler alert, you win the bet. And now they're doing that with Josh Allen. On Thursday Night Football, if Josh Allen, and you can see it right now, if he throws for 1 passing yard, which he's going to, he's active, there's no catch here, it's just a promotion. If he's going to, you win the bet. You win the bet up to the $25 limit. So it's a free $25 basically side of that prop. So go ahead and try it out. It's on PrizePicks. If you're not already a member, sign up, tell your family members, whatever it is, everybody get in on this free prop. That is on PrizePicks.com. And another bonus for you that you get no matter what, not just for this promotion, if you use the code SAL, S-A-L, lets them know that I sent you, they'll give you another bet for free up to $100. So you get a free $100 bet. You get that bet is an automatic win for the limit of 25 or 50, whatever their limit is. Bada bing, bada bang. There's your dessert, your cherry on top. You're already stuffed and take even more, right? We don't want to just fill up your belly. We want to fill up your bankroll right here. We're proud partners with PrizePicks. So go ahead and take advantage of it. Code SAL, S-A-L on PrizePicks. Get you the free $100. And there you go with that free prop. If you're looking for any potential plays to pair it with, I'm going to be taking a lot of other props. I might even make a quick video. I'm not sure if I'll have the time, but Montgomery over 72.5 rushing yards. I have him in the 90s. We love that one. And Derek Carr over 260.5 passing yards. I have him somewhere around like the 280s, like 283, I believe, without looking at my projections right now. So if you want to pair it with one or a couple of things, there's some other options that you can consider and think about. So now we slide into the running back position, and the running back position is great. It's really good. Like, this slate has solid quarterbacks. This slate is the best since I've been covering it for 4 years. The best Thanksgiving slate I've seen with just so many great prices and just good players in general. So let's discuss this running back position. We'll scroll down to get to the cheaper guys when we have to get to them. There are some other interests that aren't on the screen right now if you're listening on the pod or the YouTube version. Zeke Elliott, he got the full practice in on Tuesday. The thing with Zeke is he's $8,000. Like, can you afford it? He's been good this year. He's been solid. He's getting 19.4 opportunities per game, which leads this slate, and I don't think that shocks anybody. He's a 7-point favorite with a 29 team implied total. So if you're just talking about all the underlying metrics, well, those teams projected to score 4+ touchdowns. He's a touchdown favorite, which means he's likely and his team is likely to run more in the second half and in the fourth quarter, a lot more in these types of games, which means more secure touches for Zeke Elliott. You add in that he has currently, including the Sunday slate and Monday Night Football, the 5th best matchup on week 12, a positive right now 58% advantage against the Las Vegas Raiders that currently allow 1.43 yards before contact, basically a yard and a half before they even touch the running back, and Zeke's been good in terms of breaking tackles this year. That is fantastic behind a solid offensive line. So Zeke is going to look good. Zeke currently projects out for me for 18 fantasy points. Believe it or not, that is my 3rd highest projected running back. So even though Zeke is the most expensive running back, he's definitely in play on this slate. I currently have him coming in as the second to tied for the 2nd or 3rd highest owned. He's not even my highest projected running back. Like, Josh Allen is the highest price, but he's also my highest projected. Makes sense. There's so many good running back plays on this slate that he is my 3rd highest projected running back. So Zeke is in play. The reason he's not a yes, though, is, well, he's expensive and he's not projecting out as the best play in the slate at the running back position. So we keep him in play, definitely in play in tournaments. But for right now, we slide down to some guys who are projecting out better than him. Kamara is not one of those guys. Kamara has not practiced on Monday. He did not practice on Tuesday. Monday's the estimated practice. They don't actually practice. So I'm expecting Kamara not to play. He has not practiced in 2.5 weeks now. For him to just come out of nowhere and get a full practice on Wednesday and then play on Thursday would actually be surprising. Not shocking, but surprising to me. So we're leaving him on here just as a maybe, but I'm not expecting him to play. We go down one more to DeAndre Swift, who is projecting out. He's basically projecting out for like the same points as Zeke. It's tongue-in-cheek. It's like a half a point difference, but he's projecting out for more right now, DeAndre Swift, for me. It was nice to see last week DeAndre Swift still see 70+% of the snaps and opportunities, even with Jamal Williams coming back. Williams just sees 7 carries. Swift goes for 130 yards in back-to-back weeks, the 50-yard touchdown. The fact that Jared Goff coming back, I mentioned it's going to help like Khalif Raymond. It probably actually helps DeAndre Swift the most because Jared Goff actually can move the ball. Like, Goff is not looking good, but him throwing for 150 to 180 yards just looks fantastic compared to Tim Boyle struggling to get to 70 last week. In week 11, you ended up seeing those 17 opportunities for DeAndre Swift, 136 yards and a touchdown. He saw 4 targets from Boyle, and now you're going to see even more from Jared Goff because that's exactly what they're doing so far this year. In Detroit, very quietly has a positive 45% run blocking advantage. That is number 7 on the entire week right now. It is number 2 on the slate, only behind Ezekiel Elliott, so it's looking like a very good matchup for Swift, who clearly has that lovely advantage when it comes to just what he can do in the receiving game. I don't care as much about his terrible team total at 19.5 and the fact that he's an underdog, because if he's an underdog, if anything, it's better because targets are worth more than 2.25x more than a carry in fantasy football, especially PPR formats like DraftKings. So Swift, he's definitely in play. I'd lean to go to Swift over Zeke because of the price savings, but he's not even a yes because of these next 2 players. Now, $6,200 Mark Ingram Ingram is arguably the best running back play in the slate if David Montgomery wasn't on the slate. But $6,200 Mark Ingram did not practice. I repeat, he did not practice on Tuesday. He is also dealing with a knee injury. So this can get really wonky. Who do they have after that? They have Tony Jones. They have Dwayne Washington. Those are the remaining guys. They have Ty Montgomery, who was a running back wide receiver who's also hurt. So Wednesday is basically going to tell us what's happening here. We're not expecting Kamara to go. If Wednesday we don't see Mark Ingram practice, well, then it's going to be the Tony Jones show, and Tony Jones quickly becomes then basically the best running back play on the slate at the flat minimum price of $4,000. So just keep that in mind. Tony Jones becomes the best running back play. You play him, you don't even think about it twice. As long as he's starting out there, I would expect him to see 12 to 15 carries. I expect him to see 3 or 4 receptions. If he is not in, though, Mark Ingram's role has been elite. They are trusting Mark Ingram a lot right now. He has an 87.5 opportunity share, which would rank second in the NFL, only behind Najee Harris, if that was to sustain. That is in the 2 weeks without Alvin Kamara so far this year. And now last week, Tony Jones did return, so he actually had a backup opportunity to take some of his touches. It didn't happen. He saw 16 of the 20 carries. That's 80%. He ended up seeing, for back-to-back games, 6 targets. He now has 12 targets in 2 games without Kamara. So these New Orleans Saints running backs look really good. If there is no Ingram and Kamara, Tony Jones, fire him up. He's ready to go. But if Ingram steps on the field, he will be my second favorite running back, like a 1A, 1B, with this next player, and that next player's name is going to be David Montgomery. David Montgomery is my highest projected running back right now. David Montgomery is nowhere near the price tag right now as Ezekiel Elliott, right? He is a $2,000 cheaper than Zeke, and he's projecting out for over a point more. Over a point more for me right now. So I love this. I think David Montgomery is in an obvious smash spot. The matchup that he currently has right now against Detroit could not get any better. A positive 45% advantage. Detroit currently allows 1.47, the most on this slate, yards before contact. Their overall grading, if you're talking about their overall run defense, currently ranks 27th in the NFL. But what makes matters even better for David Montgomery is that Detroit ranks dead last in tackling, 32nd, and Montgomery is arguably, he's right up there with Nick Chubb, Derrick Henry, as Josh Jacobs to an extent, the best broken tackle running backs in the NFL right now. So everything is going to be clicking here for Montgomery. He's top 5 in the NFL quietly right now in opportunity share. The matchup is fantastic. He's a 3.5 point favorite with a decent team total. If anything, Andy Dalton instead of Justin Fields is an elevation, because I think Dalton can move the ball, especially against Detroit, and Dalton's going to check down more rather than run like Justin Fields would. So David Montgomery, I expect him to pick up some ownership, but not a lot, because people will go to Mark Ingram. They definitely will go to Swift. They will go to Zeke. So all these guys are going to have kind of balanced ownership, and Montgomery is standing there, screaming there right now on this first game on the slate, looking like a fantastic option. I go to David Montgomery here, my favorite running back play right now. Before we scroll, we cover these last 2 guys. Josh Jacobs is not going to pick up that much ownership, maybe 20 or 25%. These Las Vegas guys, they just don't look sexy. They don't look sexy. They all look okay. We'll get to the receivers. They look fine, right? The only guy who's going to look sexy is Darren Waller for obvious reasons. Derek Carr, yeah, he looks fine. But Josh Jacobs, same thing. Yeah, he looks fine. The fact that Josh Jacobs is priced right next to Montgomery and Mark Ingram, nowhere near the amount of ownership he's going to be picking up. Even though over his last 3 games, quietly has 16 targets, right? Quietly 16 targets out of Josh Jacobs, the guy who never was catching passes, got 14 receptions over the last 3 games, right? Seeing about 3 red zone opportunities per game right now. And if you're looking at the last 2 games, he's seeing a 66% opportunity share compared to Kenyon Drake, which is better than you were getting in that first month of the season, when in some games it was a near 50-50 split. So Jacobs is a 7-point underdog, but if he holds up with this pass catching usage, he's definitely going to be in play. Anytime they get to the red zone, they love to run the ball. They don't have that guy who wins in the red zone. It should be Darren Waller, but it's really not. If anything, this year it's been Hunter Renfrow, but they don't have that guy as much as they just like handing the ball off about 3 times per game to Jacobs in the red zone. So Jacobs is in play. He'll be an interesting large field GPP pivot. Like if you're going to be playing the chalky plays, if you're going to be going with the Josh Allen stacks or the Dak stacks, and you're not going to be going, I wouldn't probably stack up Josh Jacobs with Derek Carr. They don't really correlate well together. But if you're going to be going to one of those chalkier stacks, maybe you start to consider Jacobs instead of the higher owned Mark Ingram, Swift, and Montgomery's range. And then after that, like we can scroll here, you get Tony Pollard as an okay option in terms of a backup running back. The problem with Tony Pollard is he's priced up. He's $5,600. You're not getting like, if he was $4,500, $4,600, it's a different story. But Tony Pollard is the clear backup. He's going to get like 10 opportunities in this game. The fact that they're down their top 2 receivers, you might see some more 2 running back sets with some screens. Maybe Pollard sees like 5 or 6 slot snaps, which can lead to an extra target or 2, but he's priced up for it. I have Tony Pollard currently projecting for 9.7 fantasy points. Makes him an okay play, not an elite play though. After that, I don't want these Bills running backs. They're in a 3-headed backfield. They're not in a great matchup against New Orleans. They should, in theory, try and run more against these 2 high safety looks, but I just don't want it. I mean, you're not getting anything great here. Yeah, in week 9, Devin Singletary looked good on 13 touches. He ended up having 7 catches because Zach Moss was hurt and Matt Breida was not activated. In week 10, but Devin Singletary looked good. No, he just scored a touchdown. He only got 8 touches. And then in week 11, you saw a bigger role for Matt Breida, leading to just 6 touches for Devin Singletary. Breida's played 14% and 30% of the snaps the last 2 games. Zach Moss has been slowly withering away. play. Zach Moss maybe in the red zone, if anything, is where he'll be used, but he only saw 16 snaps in that last game, only 4 opportunities week 11. This is back-to-back weeks of 3 running backs seeing 5 or more touches, and no, don't even try and think that it was Matt Breida in garbage time. He's only had 1 garbage time touch these last 2 games. So all those guys look terrible. The only guy that looks good down here is $4,000 flat Jamal Williams. He projects out for like 7.5 fantasy points, which is better than every other running back price below $5,000. So if you wanted to punt running back, you don't have to because of how much value there is a wide receiver. That's where I would go, but that's the only option. Obviously, again, if Tony Jones does indeed become an option, you will go there. It's as simple as that. You play Tony Jones. Some people might have questions about Khalil Herbert. I mean, straight backup. It's all David Montgomery at this point. Damian Williams might even return. Some people might be questioning about Kenyon Drake. I want to try and cover every player. Yeah, 9 catches over his last 3 games. He had 6 in week 9, though, so it's a little skewed. 7+ opportunities in 3 straight games. The problem with that is I'll just go right down to Jamal Williams, who I think is going to see more opportunities in a better matchup, and he's $600 less. So you either punt to Jamal Williams if Tony Jones doesn't open up. If you want to actually go down here, I personally don't think you have to, or you just stay in this nice range over here of kind of the Swifts, the Ingrams, the Montgomerys, the Jacobs in that nice range. So now we transition into the wide receiver position now, and the wide receiver position is interesting and similar to an extent as running back, except there's a far greater drop-off. There's a $2,000 drop-off from the top player to the next player in terms of pricing. Right now, I have Stephon Diggs as the highest projected receiver, so he deserves this price tag, but it is a pretty wide gap. $7,900, I have him for 17.6 fantasy points. I have him currently projecting out for 3.2 more points than any other receiver, so it's justified that he's this highly priced. Just can you afford it? Can you afford it? Probably yes. Do you want to afford it is the better question. Steph Diggs last week ran 34 routes, had 6 targets, no yardage, but 2 touchdowns propelled him forward. He now has 15 or more fantasy points and DraftKings points in every game but 2 this year, 12 or more in every game but 1. So Steph Diggs has been solid. Tougher matchup this week, but I think he's one of those players in this league, the Justin Jeffersons, the Devontae Adams, that it doesn't matter if they're facing Marshawn Lattimore or whoever it is, it's going to be fine. The overall defense, though, of the Saints, that secondary is solid, so we'll see what ends up happening if they continue to limit the big plays with their cover 2 looks. So Diggs, I'm not gung-ho about. I kind of think you can choose like one. What do you want to go here? Do you want to pay up for Diggs, pay up for Zeke, or pay up for a quarterback? So you go for one of those. You see if you can fit another one in. So I kind of think it's up to you. You kind of can pick and choose at that point. These next receivers look a lot better. This $5,000 range at wide receiver, especially these top-end guys, look really good. Like Michael Gallup, I mentioned that he could be a wide receiver 1 on a lot of teams. Definitely a wide receiver 2 on basically every other team in the NFL outside of like maybe Tampa Bay, maybe Arizona. He is that good. And in week 11, he led the team with 46 routes when CeeDee Lamb got hurt and there was no Amari. He led the team with 10 targets, a 24% share. He did not play much out of the slot, 15%. So you're going to get those outside deep shots, which is good against Vegas, who doesn't play 2 high safeties. Even against the Chiefs, where it was obvious to play 2 high safeties and everybody else was limiting them with that, they went single high and the Chiefs dropped 40 points on them, right? So this is going to be a great spot for Dak and Gallup on the outside. Gallup is massively underpriced here. I think he looks really good. Darnell Mooney, Allen Robinson is now not practicing back-to-back games. He's leaning not to play with that hamstring injury. Mooney coming off of a 16 target game, a 27% target share in the season, over 7 targets per game, and now he's going to get Andy Dalton again after that 16 target game. He now has 100 or more air yards in 3 straight games, that career day for him on 92% of the snaps. Mooney also looks good. I prefer Michael Gallup, but Mooney is probably going to come in with 10% less ownership than Michael Gallup. You scroll down some more, I think Hunter Renfrow is going to be picking up the least ownership of Mooney and Gallup. Mooney because of the recent performance, Gallup because everybody knows Michael Gallup. There's no other receivers out there. He just saw 10 targets, and Renfro's coming off of arguably his worst game on the season, even though Hunter Renfrow continues to play well. He has 11 plus fantasy points in all but 2 of those games. One of those games he didn't do it was the last game, so people might go off of him. But he has 8 plus targets in 5 out of his last 7 games, coming off of a game where he just had 4 targets and only ended up producing 7 fantasy points. But like I said, he's probably their best red zone option. They're projected to score over 3 touchdowns in this game, and he's just a really easy option, especially if you want to run back some Dallas stacks here. Hunter Renfrow is currently my tied basically for Gallup, and he's a little bit cheaper, and he will definitely come in lower owned by about 10%, probably less ownership for my fantasy points as the second highest, tied for Gallup right now at the wide receiver position. So if I had to rank it right now on paper, I'd probably go Gallup number 1 and like a 2A, 2B, depending on how you're trying to build your lineup out, depending on the stacks you're using, with Mooney and Renfrow. Don't get it twisted. Mooney has way more upside because of the downfield targets. Renfrow is a lot more secure and has a better projection right now for me because of that. You then hit a little bit of a dead range here, and we can scroll to it. Robinson, like I said, he's leaning towards not playing after not practicing Monday or being at walkthroughs on Tuesday, so he has one more day to get there. For a guy who didn't practice all of last week, similar to Kamara's situation, I don't think he's going to end up playing. You get Marquez Callaway at $5,000. I have him on here as a no, which I get it is aggressive, but just keep in mind, when I have him on here as a no, it's for people that are trying to build one lineup. If you're building 20 lineups, yes, it does not mean get 0% of Marquez Callaway. It's just trying to be definitive for a lot of the audience that is not going to build 20 or 150 lineups. Marquez Callaway is going to have a tough matchup against the number one secondary that has elite safeties. Like you're talking about the Packers safeties, and then this duo in the secondary right now, the Micah Hydes, the Poiriers. These guys in that secondary are fantastic. You have Tre'Davious White as well. Marquez Callaway is an undrafted free agent who struggles to get separation. It's not going to be a good day for him at the office, right? But he's had 3 straight games of 10 plus fantasy points. Yeah, because he scored a touchdown in 3 straight games, right? I understand that that's getting him there, but at the same time, he only has 19 targets over the last 4 games. That ranks 4th. So he is 4th since Trevor Siemian has started in target share, behind a tight end Adam Trautman, who's doubtful this week, I get it, and the other 2 receivers, Deontay Harris and Traquan Smith. So tough to want to get to Marquez Callaway. The guy that I think is interesting, I have Emmanuel Sanders on here as a yes. I get it. He's not been doing anything lately. That's exactly why I like him. Emmanuel Sanders is probably going to be 15% owned on a 3-game slate for a guy who many weeks was going off. And now with these 2 high safety looks, he's not going off. Why? He only has 1 deep target over the last 3 games. He's not getting the deep targets right now. They're not throwing deep at all that much because the plays aren't there with these safeties. So I get it. There's definitely a risk here for Emmanuel Sanders, but just keep in mind, he will not be that highly owned, and everybody's going to go to the guys slightly above him or the guys slightly below him. I think it is a really sneaky leverage play, Emmanuel Sanders this week. Khalif Raymond I have on here as a no. He's actually going to get upgraded as we talk about this to a maybe now that Jared Goff seems like he is probably going to go in and start. He only saw 1 target, no receptions with Tim Boyle. But if Goff returns, you have some success, right? You had the week 7 massive game of over 110 yards on 8 targets. He seems to be the favorite receiver if you don't count Hockenson, a tight end, and Swift, the running back, as an actual receiver. It would then be Khalif Raymond as the leading receiver here in a solid matchup. Tough to really want to get to Raymond, though, when you have Sanders and you have these next 2 guys who look like the 2 best mid-range plays on the slate at wide receiver. Cole Beasley, who projects out for me right now as my 4th or my 5th highest projected wide receiver, even though he's like 10th in pricing. Cole Beasley ran 8 routes in week 10. It got bumped up to 28 after that as he healed from his rib injury, and he only had 4 catches, 27 yards. The whole offense kind of struggled. I mean, Diggs only had 23 yards, so he actually beat Diggs last week, right? But he had 5 targets. Seems like he's healed from that injury. Maybe he's not going to see as much usage with Dawson Knox involved in the red zone, especially now. But those 28 routes last week is all I needed to see. If you get 28 routes out of Cole Beasley again, he can easily see the 13 targets games that he's seen 3 times this year. So Cole Beasley, a lot of people, because of recent performance, because he was basically hurt, right? And the offense struggled everywhere last week. A lot of people won't go to him because he hasn't produced in like a month now. I'm going to go to Cole Beasley at $4,500. I currently have him coming in for only 12% ownership, 22% ownership, even though he's my number 2 value play at the wide receiver position. Traquan Smith, the guy below him, by far the best receiver on the Saints team, 3rd round pick compared to all the other undrafted rookies on that team. So, or not even rookies, just undrafted free agents. So what you're getting right now is Traquan Smith playing really well. Back-to-back games of 7 targets, building this chemistry with the Trevor Siemian, who we hope actually draws to start this game. He now has 8 plus fantasy points in 4 straight games, and he has 11 fantasy points in 3 out of 4. I mean, if you get Traquan Smith to score like 10 points at this price tag, he's paying it off, and I think he has more upside than just 10 points. He's seen 6 red zone targets over his last 4 games with Trevor Siemian. This is a good spot for Mr. Traquan Smith. We scroll down some more. If I have to take some definitive stances, I'll just say I'm not going to go to Amon-Ra St. Brown, who is playing a lot of snaps out of the slot. If anything, he saw nice targets from Tim Boyle. He saw 4 targets, which actually led the fucking team at wide receivers. I'll just avoid it and go to those other guys above him. Bryan Edwards definitely stays in play. He put up a goose egg. He's basically had goose eggs in 2 out of 3 weeks now, which is not great, but he didn't even see a target in that last game. This is not good for Bryan Edwards, but he stays on the slate because he's cheap. He's a cheap run back in those Dallas stacks for you. The week before that, he had the 88-yard game and a touchdown. He has 4 games over 12 points this year, which is 40% of his games. So there is some upside from Bryan Edwards. The problem is he's just not consistent at all. Marquise Goodwin I have as a no. That's probably aggressive. We'll put him on here as a maybe now that it's trending towards Allen Robinson not playing. You see Marquise Goodwin playing well. The 100-yard game that he had with Andy Dalton, yes, I mean, it was one big play, but he's had 8 targets in that game, which is the most that he's seen in a very long time since like his San Francisco days a while back. He sat out all of last year with COVID. He's somebody who will definitely step in as the wide receiver 2 for Chicago when and if Allen Robinson is ruled out. So Marquise Goodwin will be like that upside $3,000 play up here. And the guy who's going to be a little bit more consistent. So this is kind of like comparing, I would say, probably Emmanuel Sanders to Cole Beasley in that price range. Marquise Goodwin's going to be your high upside boomer bust type player. Whereas Deontay Harris is probably going to go out there. He's going to get you a solid 6-7 targets in this game, bring in a solid 4 or 5 catches for like 40 yards. Like he'll go out there and he'll get you a nice 8 to 10 fantasy points. If the touchdown happens, it happens and it looks really good. Because he's just running a lot of routes. He's going to run in this game like 25 routes. He has now seen 4 or more more targets in 4 straight weeks. He's just not getting a lot of downfield usage, which limits his upside. He's got 24 targets over these 4 games with Simeon, which is good to see, and he's averaging 7.6 yards per target, meaning that his receptions, his catch percentage, right, is going to be high. It's just the overall upside, if it's not a touchdown, is somewhat limited. I'll prefer Harris right now to Goodwin, but that one is really close for me. I probably don't even get to any of these guys, though, because I don't need to play 2 $3,000 cheap receivers. Gabe Davis involved in some stacks for Buffalo if you want to take a flyer, sure, but the guy that you are playing, the guy who's my number 1 wide receiver play in the slate, arguably the number 1 play in the slate, is Cedric Wilson. Cedric Wilson right now, he's going to be the wide receiver 2. He's a very good wide receiver 2 in general, right? $3,500. He played 91% of his snaps out of the slot, which is great usage for him. He saw 7 targets on 31 routes last week, and he's going to operate now as like the 1A, 1B with Michael Gallup. For a team with a 29 team implied total, Cedric Wilson looks like a smash play. Quinn Cephas is still on the IR, I believe, so he's not probably going to be playing in this game. But then you get to this range. I have Deshaun Jackson on here as a yes. That's probably a little bit bold, but I do want to at least point out, look, he's played 2 games as a Raider. In that first game, he ended up playing 18% of the snaps. He saw 1 target, a 38-yard catch, and then fumbled it, right? On just 4 routes run. And then in the second game, he sees about double the snaps, 34%, and he goes from running 4 routes to 10 routes. He doesn't get targeted, but he's seeing more usage. Now that he's had about a week and a half and not just a week to learn this playbook, you might now see Deshaun Jackson go out there, and if he plays 55, 60% of the snaps, and instead of running 10 routes, he's running 18 to 20. And when he's getting targeted, you know it's downfield. That's where the upside comes in, especially against like a cornerback like Trevon Diggs, who's going to be boom or bust in terms of jumping routes and getting beat deep. So Deshaun Jackson, 3,100. I have him on here as a yes. Just keep in mind that what that yes means is that I do like him in this cheap range if you're looking for a punt relative to like Jakeem Grant, Damiere Byrd, these guys who will be running as like the wide receiver 3s for Chicago. Also, some other great punt options, and this is why you don't have to punt at running back unless Tony Jones opens up, and you don't have to pay down for Travis Simeon and Andy Dalton because we have so many value wide receivers. Cedric Wilson, we already mentioned. All the other 4K guys that we just mentioned. Deshaun Jackson's an option, and these 2 guys look solid as well. You're going to first on here have Noah Brown. So Noah Brown looks really good because he's going to run. He's going to go out there. He ran 31 routes for Dallas last week. He's going to operate as the wide receiver 3 this week for them, attached to Dak Prescott, the wide receiver 3. Normally he's going to go out there and see, 4 to 6 targets, maybe more. He played primarily out wide with just 15% of the snaps out of the slot. And if he's going to play out wide, just like Gallup, you're going to get those single high one-on-one matchups for Noah Brown. Nobody's going to be double teaming Noah Brown. It gives him some upside. The sneaky play, though, a really sneaky and interesting correlation here is Josh Reynolds. Josh Reynolds came off the street. He started for Detroit. This is how bad their wide receiver core is. He led the team with 22 routes from Tim Boyle. He saw 3 targets, no catches. But now he is likely to get this reconnection with Jared Goff, a man that he played with in Los Angeles just last year. So Josh Reynolds now connected back with Jared Goff, arguably the number 1 wide receiver on his team and probably definitely the most talented compared to like Khalif Raymond and Trinity Benson with Quinn Cephas on IR, right? So this is a good spot for Josh Reynolds, who's just $3,000 flat. Reynolds probably runs 25 routes. He probably sees somewhere around 5 to 7 targets, and that leads to some upside. So we have all the value in the world. I have Reynolds projected and Noah Brown, both of them for around 7 fantasy points, so they both look really good. I think Reynolds comes in very low owned. I'm talking like 5% potential ownership on this slate. The only other receiver on the slate is Malik Turner. I'm probably going to put Malik Turner and Zay Jones, so I'll put Malik Turner actually as a no because I think Reynolds and Noah Brown are just far better options. Zay Jones is worth mentioning because he's led the Las Vegas Raiders in routes run each of these last 3 games since Henry Ruggs has been out. He's just not producing. He can't get separation. In week 9, 42 routes, he only caught 1 ball for 20 yards. In week 10, 28 routes led the team, 1 ball for 22 yards. In week 11, 25 routes leads the team, 1 ball for 20 yards, right? So he's kind of touchdown or bust at this point. He's not going to get enough separation to be consistent. And if Deshaun Jackson actually starts to see more usage, it's going to pull directly away from Zay Jones. So that's a lot. I know that that's a lot. I'm trying to be as in-depth as possible for every single player that we can cover so you can dominate this slate. So I appreciate you. If you appreciate me, hey, thank you for being here. If you have 2 seconds, ratethispodcast.com/Sal. Takes 2 seconds on your phone. You just hit 5 stars. If you want to, if you have the extra 30 seconds to just say, hey, this show is good, it really helps the podcast charts and puts you in a raffle to win $100 every single week if you leave that review. So I appreciate that. The banner will pop up right here. Let's finish it up with the tightest of ends right now. I'm not talking about your turkey. No, come on now. Stop being fresh. What's going on with you? I'm talking about the tightest of ends, and we're going to start up top with Mr. Darren Waller this week. Look, Darren Waller looks great. I'm not going to try and sugarcoat it. If there's one position to pay all the way up for this week, it's Darren Waller, and obviously him not being that expensive, $6,400 versus all those other guys in the upper 7 or 8K range. So it's going to be Darren Waller. He's $6,400. He's my highest projected tight end. He's my number 2 point per dollar tight end right now on the slate. I like Darren Waller a good amount, coming off of finally getting going right now, right? He's had 8 and 11 targets in 2 out of the last 3 games. He had over a 100-yard game last week. This guy is one of those guys who likes to shine in prime time. He comes out, the lights are on him in prime time. He balls out. He tries to pump up his overall brand. Not a lot of people think about this, but the actual NFL players, when they play in prime time, when they play on Thanksgiving, you know there's extra eyeballs on them. Yeah, they want to ball out. Not just because they want to play better on Thanksgiving. No, because when they ball out, it means more social following, more people follow them on Instagram, on Twitter when they score a touchdown or they have a 100-yard game and people are saying their name more, which leads to more eyeballs on their charities and more eyeballs on their brand deals and whatever other businesses that they have. Darren Waller is one of those guys. You get guys like Devontae Adams, DeAndre Hopkins. These dudes show out under the lights. Waller is one of those dudes. Week in and week out, whenever he's on prime time, he absolutely dominates. He has 7+ targets in all but one game this year. We love Darren Waller. We also like Dalton Schultz a lot because with those top wide receivers out, even though they got solid wide receivers filling in for Dallas, Dalton Schultz is going to be really good. In week 11, Dalton Schultz, he ends up playing 98% of the snaps, all but one snap. He leads the team with 45 routes, and he sees 8 targets, a 19% share. I expect Dalton Schultz to be the primary red zone option for this team. I have him for 14.4 fantasy points, making him the #1 SuperDraft play in the slate. That's another website if you're interested, and also the #1 point per dollar value on DraftKings. Lots of great tight ends on the slate. One of the guys who probably goes very low owned, 15% projected ownership right now. I don't have him on here as a yes, so that's going to trend down ownership even more, is Hockenson. And Hockenson, I only didn't have him on here as a yes because I thought Tim Boyle was starting, right? But even from Tim Boyle, you saw a 32% target share and 7 targets. So Hockenson is definitely going to be lower owned because he's right next to Dalton Schultz in the price point, and everybody is going to go to Schultz, who's been performing much better as of late. And everybody's going to go to Schultz, who has a 10-point higher team total, a better quarterback situation, right? So Hockenson is somebody who's probably going to go a little bit under the radar, from being completely honest with you. If you're looking for that sneakier play, if you're playing the chalk everywhere else, going to Hockenson is a solid option. Dawson Knox, he's the zone beater. He's so expensive on the showdown slate, but right here he's dirt cheap, $4,400. Week 11 saw a season high 98% of the snaps. He saw a season high 40 routes. He saw a season and team high 10 targets in that game. They need Dawson Knox to be a zone beater. They need Cole Beasley to be a zone beater. Love both of those guys this week. You could see Cole Kmet's on the screen. I find it hard to get to Cole Kmet if I'm being completely honest with you. Now, over his last 5 games, all basically with Justin Fields, he's averaging 8.1 fantasy points per game. He ran 26 routes in week 11. It didn't end up leading to that much usage overall with Andy Dalton. The first 2 games of the year with Andy Dalton, he saw a 7-target game, which was nice in week 1, and then only 1 target on 1 catch for no yards in week 2. So it's kind of been up and down with Dalton. No, Allen Robinson should definitely help Cole Kmet. The problem with Cole Kmet is a similar problem that we're having at the running back position. Why do you have to pay down? Is there any advantage to paying down? Is Cole Kmet really going to outscore all these tight ends above him? Because the wide receivers we have on this slate, there's so many of them. There's 5 or 6 receivers in the 3K range alone that are going to be viable. That do we really want to go to Cole Kmet? I just don't think you have to pay down this cheap. So we keep scrolling, and like there's other just backups on here at this point that don't really stand out, like Foster Moreau, Jimmy Graham. But the guy who does stand out is Juwan Johnson. Adam Trautman is doubtful for this game. Juwan Johnson, a former receiver at Penn State for 3 years, graduated from Oregon his 4th year, got converted to a tight end this preseason and played well at that position by Sean Payton. Juwan Johnson's going to come out here right now, and he's actually a player who does stand out a little bit. Juwan Johnson was a healthy scratch in week 11 because Nick Vannett was back, but without Trautman being out there, I expect Juwan Johnson to be active. I expect him to top his season high 12 routes that he's had this year. He probably runs around 18 routes or so in this game. He's a 6'4", 230-pound athletic speed wide receiver that's now a tight end, right? So you're going to get a little bit of upside here. But the same question presents itself. Is it worth paying down for? The only reason it might be worth paying down for is because he's $2,600. He's not $3,700. So a $2,600 of Juwan Johnson, who has 3 touchdowns on the season, by the way. And we know Trevor Siemian has loved targeting the tight end, right? Trevor Siemian has currently targeted 6.8 times per game Adam Trautman over the last 4 games. That leads the team right now. 6+ targets in 4 straight games for Adam Trautman. If Juwan Johnson sees somewhere around that usage and actually starts to get some upside, and you get a 10 to 12-point fantasy day out of Juwan Johnson, yeah, $2,600, that is going to be needed. So $2,600, that price difference, even if it's just off of Dawson Knox by $1,800, is enough to actually make it worth going down to a Juwan Johnson. Now, again, it depends on your lineup construction. If you're already paying down at running back or receiver or quarterback, you don't have to do this. But if you're somebody who wants to play Zeke, Diggs, and Josh Allen, all the expensive dudes on this slate together, yes, paying down for Juwan Johnson makes some sense. The only other tight ends on the slate, Sean McKinnon, he's like the backup right now in Dallas, taking on the Blake Jarwin role, except a lot less usage than Blake Jarwin. You saw McKinnon, I believe I have notes for everybody here, only ran 3 routes last week. Nick Vannett made his season debut. He's a run blocking and pass blocking tight end primarily out of Pittsburgh and Seattle previously before the Saints. Season debut last week, caught a ball for 20 yards, played 27% of the snaps, mainly going to be a run blocker. I expect Juwan Johnson to perform as the main tight end there for New Orleans. So there you go. That's a lot. This is the longest video that we've done, and it's only a 3-game slate because I wanted to make sure I talked about every single player on this slate that maybe is going to be viable. So now you have all the information you need. You got all the mashed potatoes in your stomach. You got all the gravy coming out of your eyeballs and your earballs at this point, and now you're ready to roll. So I appreciate you tuning in. If you have not already, the subscribe button pops up. I greatly appreciate if you can do that, and if you can tell a friend to tell a friend about this channel, if you can tell a friend to tell a friend about the Josh Allen over a half a passing yard promo with the code SAL to get that extra $100 bet, it really helps a ton, and you obviously benefit a ton from those things. We will be back on Friday talking about Sunday's 10-game slate, Saturday talking about that 10-game slate as well from a that one dude, a low-owned players standpoint, and then Sunday we'll have the live stream. We go live 3 days a week for all the main slates, Monday night, Thursday night, and Sunday. So if it was your first time meeting me, it was great to meet me. It was great to meet you. It was great to meet me as well, right? That's my thick-ass pumpkin that's rotten. Now that Thanksgiving's about to be over, we'll throw that shit out, and we'll take on the beautiful, and some may say cute, Santa teddy bears and all that type of stuff. So thank you for being here. Enjoy the rest of your Thanksgiving with your family, your friends, yourself, your left hand. I don't even care. Enjoy it. Enjoy the food. Enjoy the football. And win the dollar whiskeys out there in the DFS and betting streets. I'll see you when I see you, gang. I appreciate you being here. I'll see you in the next one.